fear, anxieties, caution, death threats on a person or families, guilt. These are just some of the emotions that victims go through as they navigate their victimization. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to DMB Live, where the conversation continues. I invite you to sit back and relax and listen carefully to this sensitive interview we're about to have. Tonight's conversation is on victimization and forgiveness. And in order to protect the victims, and in particular the victim we're going to talk to, I asked the interviewee not to use your last name or your geographical location. I'm just going to call you Yvette. So good evening, Yvette. How are you?
Good evening. I am great. How are you?
I'm fine. So I know you were victimized in some fashion, but I would like you to tell us, how have you made strides in your recovery?
So, to make strides in my recovery, first and foremost, I had to understand that it was not my fault. I had to come to the realization that I did nothing wrong. I had to love myself. So, before I could start really a true healing process, it started within me. Yes, I went to therapists. Yes, I you know, reached out to the resources that are available for victims, but it was always reoccurring in my mind. I would always have trigger moments or trigger points. I had to realize that it had to come from within.
Mm.
So that's how I started.
So once again, I'm going to protect your full identity and your location, but I have to ask you, were you shot or stabbed? Are you okay with talking about that with me?
Yes, I'm okay with it.
Okay. So were you shot or were you stabbed or were you beat up? How were you victimized?
So I was raped, I was stabbed, I was beaten,
Um,
I was kidnapped, um, I was restrained or tied up. I I was uh I was left for dead in a cemetery. Mhm.
mm. So setbacks and depression and PTSD, psychosis, and other mental disorders are common to those who were victimized, even after they have been addressed. So I guess, so we're going to jump around a little bit in this interview because really what we're talking about tonight is victimization and forgiveness. And one of the things I want to know, and I think that the listener audience and the viewing audience would like to know, is it possible after what you just described, and you didn't give us a lot of details, but you told us what happened, are you able to forgive? Can you find it within yourself to forgive the person or persons that did that to you?
Yes, you have to forgive. You cannot move forward without forgiving. You have to realize, once you realize that it's an illness, that that person has a mental illness
Hmm.
and that they have to be forgiven in order for you to be able to ebb and flow and to move on with your life. I'm not saying that you'll ever forget because I would never forget. But have I forgiven? I have. Forgiving someone doesn't mean that you have to go to that person and say to that person, I beg for your forgiveness for this, that, or the third.
Okay.
No, the
Okay.
forgiveness is for yourself. So when I made peace with myself, I made peace with him. I was able to forgive him. Did I ever say those words physically to him? No,
Okay.
but I have forgiven him. Yes.
So the impact, this is, I mean, what you just described to us is like, it's chilling. And let me keep it together here. So can you tell us about the impact it might have had on your family, children, if you had any? Can you just kind of tell us about those days?
Wow, yes. Okay. Impact on the family. So we feel as though we're going through it alone, but in reality, we're not alone. Everyone that's tied to us, everyone that loves us is impacted. The impact is so strong because those that love you don't understand that is deeper than just walking away.
Mm,
It's a fear. It's a mental thing. The impact on my family was so strong that so
take your time.
my son, my firstborn child is a product of rape.
Oh,
I love my son more than life. I would do anything for my son. And aborting him was not an option for me. In the midst of the choice that I made to have my son, the abuser was his father, sperm donor.
okay.
That trickled down to the relationship with between them. They have no relationship. Um, as my son grew and heard different things and knew different things, his anger was towards me. Um,
Why?
he didn't understand why would I allow someone to do those things to me, and you know the same questions that everyone else has. He had um, my, and that's just my children. Going to my parents, it definitely was an impact to see your parents cry because you're beat up and it's by the hands of someone else and you're protecting them, but they don't realize that you're protecting them,
Mm,
and they don't understand that. So within that comes, and I think a lot of people may be able to relate. I'm not going to get involved because I'm going to get involved, and then she's only going to go back.
right. Mm,
So then it turns to that, and that's just because not understanding and what have you. So it does put a wedge up with families. It's a big impact. It's not just the victim that suffers.
the entire family. I want to ask you a question, and I want to go back to when this happened. How did the law enforcement handle this? I mean, what you described to us was horrific, and I only can imagine what you went through as an individual and your family. But how did the police handle this situation, if you don't mind me asking?
The police would take a police report, because that's what they are required to do.
Hmm.
Once they start asking you questions, as far as do you know the assailant, the person that assaulted you, do you have a relationship with them, how close do you know them? Once you answer those questions and you answer those questions honestly, the whole narrative changes. At that point, you feel the shift in the room. They're looking at each other. At that point, it's you can assume that it's not being taken seriously. After that, it is your job to become the detective. You're calling the police station, asking, have they picked him up yet? You're riding around, seeing where he is, calling 911, saying, listen, he's here. Can you come get him? They're taking their time. They'll get there. They'll knock on the door. Whoever answers the door says, oh, no, he's not here. They can't go in without a search warrant. It's just and now your life is put in danger because now he is aware that now you have the police after him. And he knows all I have to do is stay under the radar and they won't catch me. But in the meantime, he tortures you.
Are you African American?
I am.
So the people, the police and those that examined you or even listened to your testimony, and you know you're in distress. Were they white?
The police officers, because of um, the city that I resided in, the police officers were African American.
Okay.
Once it goes from the police officers to the courts, at that point, majority are Caucasian.
And so you, as an African American female, feel that you were doubted once you were transparent with your answers to the questions. Did you know the assailant and things of that nature? That's fair to say.
That is fair to say.
So one of the reasons why we're doing this series on victimization and forgiveness is because there's a lot of women and young women, girls, teenagers who probably has been going through right now as we speak what happened to you. And I feel like we hit the jackpot tonight by bringing in you, Yvette. That's all I know you as is Yvette. But here's a question to you. What would you say to anybody who's listening to this interview? And how would you can you tell them how they should think about proceeding after being victimized?
First, I would like to say it is not your fault. You did nothing wrong. You are a strong individual, and the person that did this to you, they seen something in you. It's not a weakness that they seen in you. They seen an opportunity because they're an opportunist. So you did nothing wrong. You had no clue. If you knew ahead of time, you would not have been in that position. Nobody wants to be in that position. You stand your ground and always live in your truth, no matter what. People will judge you, but you won't be the first, nor will you be the last. You stand in your truth, no matter what. To be able to move forward, like I stated earlier, first and foremost, forgive yourself.
Mm,
Once you forgive yourself,
mm,
then you're able to clear your mind and know what it is that you have to do. Document everything. Everything that you can remember, you write down.
mm.
Everything that happens, you document it. Date, time, everything. Because when it comes down to it, it's more um, believable if you have a log than
Right,
standing there trying to pull something from your mind saying 3 months ago on this day, I think it was that day. You
right.
log everything.
Mm,
Go to the authorities. Show them. Tell them. Let your voice be heard. If one person doesn't hear you, then you don't stop. Never be afraid. Always understand that the perpetrator is weak.
mm, mm.
If they were strong, then they would not have victimized us the way that they did. They're weak. They're
And
narcissists.
mm, wow. And by
You
them
are
being mm,
strong. You are phenomenal. There is no one greater than you.
and with them being weak and narcissists, as you just described, you're saying to me that that's a reason to forgive them. Is that correct? Because of their
I believe,
weakness?
I believe it is a reason to forgive them because it is a mental illness. So it is a journey, and I will say that. And I will say that no one wakes up saying, I'm going to be this way. We are who we are from our past,
Mm,
whether it be childhood trauma that we've dealt with as children, regardless of what it is, who we are today comes from our look back. We have to
mm,
forgive, if not for that person, but for yourself. I forgive him. I want for my brothers and sisters what I want for myself.
Right.
And what I want for myself is success, happiness, peace, abundance, prosperity. I want all of those high vibrational things. I have to want that for
Mm,
my brothers and my sisters as well. How can I get it if I'm not putting that out? I
mm.
have to want that for the other women that he will encounter. All of those things. I have to forgive. And not for him, but for me. If not for him, for the next woman that he encounters.
Do you have any daughters? Do you have a lot
I
of
do. I
nieces?
do.
You have a daughter?
I have a daughter and I have quite a few nieces, yes.
Oh, so you're from a big family. Okay. Wow, Yvette, you've touched on every aspect and point of this interview. It's hard to talk about a person's victimization and not feel sensitive. So I was trying not to allow my bias and emotions get involved in this conversation. And I'm doing a pretty good job of that, actually. But if you forgiving, I forgiving. Okay. But that doesn't mean that you can forget. The thing I think that what you touched on that was so important that I took out of this was communicate to communicate if you have been victimized in any fashion, communicate with the right people and make sure that you get your word out and your message out. And again, you can go back to that point where you said that you are really important as an individual and it wasn't your fault.
Yes, yes. And if there's something else that I could say, I
Sure.
I want to answer a question that um, was always asked of me. And at one point in my journey, it made me cringe and it made me not, it shut me down because I didn't want to be asked the question. I'm stronger, so I will answer this without being asked. The
Mm-hmm.
question I always received was, why did you not leave? Why did you stay? The answer to that is fear is what kept me. It is a mental thing. When
Mm-hmm.
you first meet that person, they're the best person. They wine you, they dine you, they treat you like a queen, they treat you like gold. When that light switches, you're already in it. You love that person. So now you're trying to understand, well, what happened? What's wrong? So now, because you love this person, you're trying to fix it because you're trying to figure out, well, what went wrong? And this is all verbal.
Mm-hmm.
By the time that it gets to physical, you're already mentally messed up. And now that fear has already set in because verbally he's torn you down.
And let me ask you this, Yvette. So looking forward and looking, you know, hindsight, like right now, let's just talk about today. The reason why you wouldn't have any fear with a situation like this is because you have God in your life. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So God and fear don't occupy the same space. Is that correct?
Not at all. That is correct.
Okay, so you have no fear. So the message that I'm pulling out of you, and you're doing a fantastic job. I'm gonna tell you that right now. To be able to relive what happened to you and then describe it to us. And the message that you're giving us is really what I want those that are being victimized right now to hear. So you have done a fantastic job on that. And I guess that one of the things that I want them to understand, if you have God in your life and fearing God don't occupy the same space.
Not at all. And they also need a support system.
Hmm.
They need that support system. It's not as easy as just walking away. You have many people that would say, "Oh, you can leave, you can come stay with me, or what have you, what may." But when you're in it,
Hmm.
That's really not a reality because you're thinking, if I go stay with Jane, now I'm gonna bring drama to Jane's house, and now
Right.
Jane's gonna put me out, and now where am I going to go? There's a whole lot that is
Mm,
tied into it. So a support system, a strong support system is very much needed. A safe house. You know, if he comes to my house, then my brothers or cousins or whatever going to deal with him. He won't come back here no more. Like that is the support that that family needs. Those times when she feels weak and she feels like, oh, I got to go back because he was paying the bills or this or that, that support system needs to do intervention and sit her down and say, no, you don't. Here, collectively, we took up money. Here you go. We're going to pay that bill.
mm.
We're going to help you get on your feet. That is what that victim needs.
Well, Yvette, let me ask you another question. I have two more, a question, then a comment, and we're gonna close. But I guess the question is, for a 18-year-old, no, I'm sorry, let's go back to about 14-year-olds and 15-year-olds. Can you describe just some of the signs that they should be looking for in a domestic abuse relationship, even at that age? Is there any signs that they should kind of like give them a red flag, or are they too young to understand those signs?
No, those signs are definitely there. First of all, physical.
Got you.
If he's grabbing you,
Mm,
um, if he's like pushing you and things like that, you know, it's not playing. We don't play like that.
right.
What he's doing is if he's pushing you, if he's grabbing you, he's testing you.
Mm.
He's baiting you in. So no physical, no. Um, that's a sign.
And also, wouldn't you think that verbal abuse is a sign also?
Most definitely.
Okay, got you.
Most definitely. Um, Verbal abuse, if he's degrading to you, if he's tearing you down, you know, always condescending or what have you, you know, those things. If he's not feeding your spirit and building you up, but taking away.
Mm.
If he
So,
doesn't, if he's always asking you for something, money or if he wants to know where you are all of the time. He's always on the phone with you. He always wants to know where you're at. He wants to know all of your friends. Just that control. When you're
wow.
young, you look at it like, oh, I'm in love and he loves me. No,
But in
that
reality,
yes,
those are the signs.
those are the signs.
Wow. So Yvette, I don't want to cut this short, but I think we have to end this interview. The question I had, well, that was the question, and the comment is, if I'm able to get the audience that I'm looking for, and I'm talking about the younger generation, because I have relatives too that fall into that category. Don't know what their life is entailing, but what if it's something that they're not talking about? I want them to hear this. In addition to that, I want them to hear part two. So you know where I'm going with this, right? I want to know, will you come back in a couple of weeks and have this conversation again, and we can grow on this, and maybe perhaps it will help save somebody's life. That's what my goal is.
Yes, I would definitely would be honored to come back.
Well,
Yes.
thank you so much. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Dr. Mike. The conversation continues. I'm just so excited that we had this conversation, and it was really, really something to behold. I really appreciate you, Yvette. And all I have to be able to contact you is through an email. If you get an email from me, you know it's me. And
Yes.
I thank you so incredibly. I thank you so much. You have
I
a great
thank
night.
you. I thank you as well and for the opportunity to speak and to let all of the young ladies out there know. And there are guys out there that are being victimized as well. You are phenomenal. You are amazing. There is no one greater than you.
And thank you for mentioning that, because that's going to be part two. I wasn't going to mention that, but since you brought it up, there are men that are also victims also. So
Yes.
we'll touch on that too. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have